This is Ovid's Metamorphoses, translated into English by Alan Mandelbaum. Book 5. But while the stalwart son of Danae told the story of his feats, the royal halls were filled with din and discord, not the sounds of festive wedding songs, but the uproar that rises at the start of savage quarrels. What was a feast is now a bitter brawl. One might well liken it to tranquil seas that swell when winds, berserk, whip suddenly. It's Phineus, the brother of the king, who dared to start the strife. Now, in the lead, he brandishes his bronze-tipped ashen shaft. He shouts, "I'm here! I want revenge! You snatched my bride, but it is you whom I shall seize. This time, no thing can save you, not your wings, nor Jove appearing in a shower of gold." But just as Phineus was set to strike, King Typhoeus cried, "What frenzy drives your mind? How can you, brother, conjure such a crime? Is this what Perseus deserves, the way in which you would repay a guest so brave? It's he who saved her life. He did not snatch Andromeda from you. It was the wrath of the immortal Nereids. It was horned Ammon and that monster of the sea who came to glut his belly on the flesh of my own flesh. Yes, brother, it was they who took Andromeda from you when she was doomed to die. Unless your cruelty wants just this thing, her death, that you might be consoled at the expense of my own grief. Beneath your very eyes, you saw her chained. You were her uncle and her promised mate, yet you did nothing then. You brought no aid. How, then, can you outcry when someone saved her life? Why, then, deny him what he's gained? If winning her as wife seems such a prize, you should have sought to free her from that rock where she was helpless chained. You failed to act, so let him keep what he has won. I've sworn to give him his reward. If not for him, I now would be a sorrowing old man. And try to understand, the choice was not between yourself and him. My choice was made between yourself and death, her certain fate." His brother did not answer, but in doubt, not knowing which of two to strike, he stared, at each in turn, at Typhoeus and at Perseus. Yet doubt did not last long. With all the force of rage, he aimed his shaft at Perseus, but missed the mark. His lance head struck a couch. There it held fast, but Perseus leapt at last upon the cushions, grabbed the shaft, and cast the lance straight back. It surely would have smashed the chest of Phineus if, shamefully, that wretch had not been quick enough to scurry behind the altar, taking refuge there. And yet that shaft had some effect. It struck, full force, the face of Proetus. As he fell, he wrenched the iron from his bone. He writhed. He stained with blood the well-spread banquet table. At that, the fury of the crowd could not be checked. They hurled their shafts. Some called for death to Perseus and to Typhoeus. But the king had fled his palace, even as he called on loyalty and justice and the gods of hospitality as witnesses that he had tried to stop that sacrilege. And then warlike Minerva came to shield her brother with her aegis, giving him fresh courage. Now, there was an Indian among the guests, a youth called Athos, one who had been born in Ganges' crystal stream. His mother was that river's nymph, Limnaea. His beauty was stupendous, and the boy, 16 years old in full force, wore rich robes that made him still more handsome, for his cloak was purple fringed with gold, a golden chain adorned his neck, a golden diadem curved round his hair, which was perfumed with myrrh. He was adept at hurling javelins at distant targets, but he was still more adept at bending bows, and even then, while Athos was intent upon his bow, the stalwart Perseus snatched the smoldering brand, one he had taken from the altar's center, and smashed the face of Athos, crushed his skull. Now, Athos's close, inseparable friend was the Assyrian Lycabas, a man whose love was true, love he did not hide. And when he saw that splendid face defiled by blood, and saw his comrade breathe his last beneath that cruel wound, he wept, then grasped the bow his friend had bent. With that in hand, he cried, "Now face a man! You won't rejoice too long at your defeat of this poor boy, a victory that earns you more contempt than glory." As he spoke, the sharp-tipped shaft streaked from the bowstring, but his aim was off. Within a fold of Perseus's robe, it stuck. Acrisius's grandson turned on Lycabas with that same scimitar which he had flashed in killing the Medusa. This he plunged into the chest of the Assyrian, and dying, Lycabas, with eyes that swam in darkness, turned to search for Athos and, beside the body of the boy, collapsed, but bore this comfort even as he left to join the shades. He shared death with his friend. At that, Metion's son, Cyanian Phorbas, and Libyan Amphimedon, too keen to join the fight, slipped on warm blood that drenched a stretch of floor, and when they tried to rise, the blade of Perseus slashed the throat of Phorbas. Then he drove his sword between the other's ribs. But he did not employ his blade to vanquish Eurytus, the son of Actor, who held high a battle-axe, broad and two-edged. Instead, with both his hands, he lifted up a giant bowl embossed with figures, and he smashed that mass against the son of Actor. On his back near death, the fallen victim vomited red blood and pounded with his head against the ground. Then Perseus felled Caucasian Abarus, and from the line of Queen Semiramis, proud Polydectes, and Lycetes, come from Sperchios' shores, and Clitus, Phlegias, and Helice, whose hair was never shorn. That done, the hero treaded on the heaps of dying men. And even Phineus was now afraid to deal with Perseus directly, so he cast his javelin, but it was aimed in error, striking Idas, who until now had all in vain abstained from fighting, taking sides with neither part. He stared at savage Phineus. In rage he cried, "Since I am forced to join this fray, accept, O Phineus, the blow you made, and with this blow let your blow be repaid." He wrenched the javelin out of his flesh, but then, about to fling it back, collapsed. No blood was left within the limbs of Idas. Hodites of the Ethiopians, Cepheus alone could claim a higher rank, fell too, cut down by Clymenus. Hypsaeus killed Prothoenor, and in turn was killed by one of Lynceus's line. Among them all there stood the old Amathion, a man who fostered fairness and revered the gods. His years forbade his taking up a lance, and so he fought with words, assailed, attacked that wretched battle as his trembling hands embraced the altar. Chromis with his sword struck off Amathion's head, and as it rolled across the altar, half alive, his tongue still spat out maledictions till his breath, amid the altar fires, breathed its last. And then at Phineus's hands, both Proetus and Ammon, they were brothers, met their death. Though none had bested Ammon as a boxer, what good can gauntlets do when they meet swords? So too did Ampicus, a priest of Ceres, his temples circled by a white headband. You, son of Lampetus, not used to war, but to the peaceful work of voice and lyre, had been invited to delight the guest, to celebrate the wedding with your chants. The son of Lampetus now stood apart, an inoffensive plectrum in his hand, when Pegasus said scornfully, "Your chant is still not done. Go! Sing the rest before the shades of Styx!" That said, he pierced the bard's left temple with his dagger. As he fell, the dying fingers of the poet brushed again across the lyre's strings. That touch, by chance, gave voice to sad and shadowed chords. That sight enraged Lycormas. To avenge that death, he wrenched a robust wooden beam out of the doorpost. With full force he smashed the nape of Pegasus, who then collapsed along the ground, as does a butchered bull. Cyniphian Pilates, on his part, tried to wrench a plank out from the left doorpost, but even as he tried, the javelin of Proetus, born in Marmarica, pierced his right hand and pinned him to the plank. With Pilates held fast, the lance of Abas impaled his side. He did not fall to earth, but, dying, there he hung down from the wood to which his hand was nailed. And Menelaus, a partisan of Perseus, also fell, as did another, Dorylas, who held the richest fields of Macedonia. No one could match the acres he possessed, or gather more abundant heaps of incense. Caught by a lance that had been shot aslant, his groin was struck, and that's a fatal hit. And when the Bactrian Halcyoneus, the man who hurled that shaft, saw Dorylas gasping, his eyes askew, about to die, he cried, "Of all the plots that you possess, this spot where you now lie is all that's left," and left him a cadaver there. But Perseus was quick to seek revenge. He wrenched the shaft out from the still warm wound and hurled it back. It hit Halcyoneus' nose, then drove straight through his neck, protruding on both sides. While fortune favored him, he also killed Clanus and Clytius. Born of one mother, they died of different wounds. The sturdy arm of Perseus cast one ashwood lance that ran through both of Clytius's thighs. The other shaft caught Clanus in the mouth. He bit that lance. And then, beneath the hands of Perseus fell both Celadon of Mendes and Astraeus. His mother was a Palestinian, his father was a gnome, and Aithion, till then adept at reading days to come, but cheated this time by a lying omen. Thoactes, armor-bearer of the king, and then Agirtes, who'd earned infamy for killing his own father. Perseus is weary, but his enemies are many, and they are bent on killing him alone. Arrayed against them from all sides they thrust. They all support a cause that would insult both worth and trust. The only ones who stand together with him are King Cepheus, but the king, however honest, has no force. The new bride and her mother, their laments are loud enough, and yet are lost among the clash of weapons and the moans of those who have fallen. Through the desecrated house, Bellona pours out streams of blood as she incites again renews the strife. And now where Perseus stands, he is hemmed in by Phineus and 1,000 of his men. The shafts fly faster to the left, the right, than winter hail. They graze his ears, his eyes. Against a great stone pillar, Perseus plants his back and so protects it from attack. He faces their assaults, confronts his foes as they press on against him. On the left, it is Malpaeus of Chaonia who threatens. On the right it is Ethamon the Nabatean, even as a tigress who feels the bite of hunger if she hears the bellowing of two herds that appear to come from different valleys, does not know which herd to harry. She is hot for both. So Perseus, now unsure of what is best, to strike against the right, against the left, first wounds Malpaeus's leg, and is content to let him flee. And now he guards against Ethamon, who allows no truce, but lifts his blade in rage and tries to slice the neck of Perseus. But he has not gauged his force and cracks his sword against the column stone. The blade breaks off against its owner's throat. It slides, but it inflicts no fatal wound. And there Ethamon stands. He trembles and, a suppliant, lifts up his helpless hands. And Perseus sinks the gift of Mercury, his scimitar, into Ethamon's body. But Perseus saw that all his strength might yet be forced to yield before their crowded ranks. He cried, "You have compelled me to this step. From my own enemy I must seek help. If any here by chance are friends of mine, let them avert their eyes." And he raised high the Gorgon's head. Then Thescelus cried out, "Go, let your magic frighten someone else," and set himself to hurl his deadly lance. But he was frozen in that very act, a marble statue. Ampyx stood nearby, and with his sword he rushed to strike the chest that held the mighty soul of Perseus. But as he thrust, his right hand, now grown stiff, could not move forward, and could not move back. And Neleus, who falsely once claimed that he was born of Nile, the stream with 7 mouths, he even had the shape of 7 channels engraved upon his shield, with some in gold and some in silver, now cried, "Now, Perseus, see the source from which I spring. You will derive much solace when you reach the dead, the shades, for you'll have fallen at the hands of one who is so great a champion." But his words were stifled in mid-speech. You would have said his open mouth still tried to speak, and yet words could not pass. Now Eryx scorned that pair. He cried, "It's lack of courage, not the power of Gorgon, that has made you stiff. Let us lay low this youth and his enchanted arms." He started his attack. The earth held fast his feet, and he was halted motionless, a rock, the image of a man in armor. All these indeed deserved the fate they met. But Perseus had one friend, Aconteus, who fought on his behalf, but chanced to stare at Gorgon's head and hardened into stone. Astyages, who thought Aconteus still a living man, struck hard with his long sword against the stony form. The sword gave out a clanging sound, and while Astyages was still dismayed by that, the very same force overcame him too. And on his face, now stone, the look of wonder still remained. It would take far too long were I to tell the names of all the commoners who fell. 200 men were left to carry on, 200, seeing Gorgon, turned to stone. Then Phineus was ready to repent, at last, for having launched this unjust clash. But what can he do now? As he looks round, he sees the varied shapes, the forms he knows. He recognizes all his men he calls, on each by name for help. He can't believe what his eyes see. He touches those most close, and all are marble now. He turns away, and to his side he stretches out his hands and arms, the gesture of a suppliant. And, ready to confess his guilt, he says, "You are the victim, Perseus. Now set aside that monstrous prodigy, that head of your Medusa. It begets hard stone, whatever it may be. I beg, I plead, put it away. It was not out of hate for you, nor out of any lust to take the kingship that I fought. I only sought to win my wife. You had more worth, but I could claim that I came first. Yes, I was slow to yield. For that I now repent. Just grant my life and nothing more to me. The rest is yours to take and keep. You are the bravest." As he said this, he did not dare to look at him to whom he prayed. And Perseus replied, "You are a coward, Phineus, but this I can allow you, to be sure. And it is a great favor, do not fear. No one will ever harm you with a spear. No, not at all, for I shall make of you a monument that always will endure. For age on age within these very halls, here in the palace of my father-in-law, you will be seen by all. My wife will draw some solace from the image of the man who once had sworn that he would be her husband." That said, he turned the face of Phorcys' daughter to that side where bewildered Phineus had turned. And Phineus, too, tried to avert his eyes. Too late. His neck grew stiff, the tears he shed were turned to stone, and looking so, in marble now, he stayed. His face displayed his cowardice, his pleading gaze, his hands implored. The statue caught his cringing stance. Then back to Argos, city of his birth, triumphant Perseus, with his bride, returned. And though Acrisius did not deserve a champion so worthy, he avenged his father's father. Proetus, a usurper, had driven out Acrisius his brother, and seized the citadel. But not his arms, and not the stronghold he had stolen, helped the cause of Proetus. He could not defeat the savage gaze of Gorgon, grim, snake-wreathed. But Polydectes, you, the king of small Seriphus, still were harsh, implacable. Despite young Perseus's worth, his feats and trials, your hatred of him, venomous and vile, was endless. Yes, you even dared belittle his slaying of Medusa. Speaking ill, you said it was invented, false, a fable. But Perseus cried, "If you want proof, then I will give it to you. Let the others hide their eyes." And with Medusa's head held high, he left that skeptic bloodless, petrified. Her brother, until now, had always had Minerva at his side, but now she left. Out from Seriphus with a hollow cloud to cloak her, passing Gyarus and Cynthus. Upon her right she took the shortest course. Over the sea she reached the lands of Thebes and Helicon, the virgin Muses' home. When she had come to rest upon those slopes, she told the learned sisters I have heard that you now have a new and wondrous fount on Helicon. It burst out from the ground beneath the winged Pegasus' hard hoof. I've come to see this marvel. I was there when, from Medusa's blood, that horse was born. Urania replied, "No matter what has drawn you to our home, you gladden us, O goddess, with your visit. You can trust the news you heard. We owe to Pegasus, our sacred spring. She led the goddess to see that wonder." And Minerva looked, at length, at where the waters had sprung up beneath the horse's hoof when it had struck hard, and then her eyes took in the ancient forests, the inmost groves, the grottos, and the flowers, those countless points of color on the meadows. She said the daughters of Mnemosyne, in what they did and where they lived, were blessed. O goddess, if your merits had not won for you much higher tasks than we perform, you would have joined our band. And you are right when you commend our home and praise our art, one sister answered. We are fortunate, as long as we can count on peace. But now, when there's no viciousness that's not allowed, we virgins find our minds are menaced by all things, and always, there before our eyes, we can recall the savage Pyreneus. That scene of terror has not left me yet. This cruel king, commanding Thracian ranks, had captured Daulis and the lands of Phocis, and ruled with an unjust and iron hand. While we were traveling toward Parnassus's shrine, he saw us passing, and he recognized just who we were, and, feigning reverence for us as deities, said with deceit, "Stop here, you daughters of Mnemosyne. Don't hesitate. The sky is menacing. The rain has started falling." And indeed it had. "My house will shield you from the storm. The gods have often entered humble homes." Persuaded by the weather and his words, we entered, taking refuge in his hall. But when the north wind won against the south, and rain no longer fell, and shadow clouds across a sky grown bright were in retreat, we all prepared to leave. But Pyreneus was quick to shut the door. He wanted us by force. But putting on our wings, we fled. And then, as if he could have followed us across the air, he hurried to the top of his tall fortress, shouting, "Just as you can travel through the air, so can I too." Well, he lost his mind. Down from that pinnacle, he hurled himself. Head first he fell. His skull was smashed, and as he died, he stained the soil, defiling it with his foul blood. The Muse was still not finished with her words, when through the air there came the sound of whirring wings, and from the high boughs voices offered greetings. Minerva looked on high. She tried to find what tongues had voiced those sounds which seemed so like the speech of humans, but it was magpies she saw upon those branches. There were 9 who, all aligned, lamented their sad fate. Whatever sounds they like, they imitate. And as Minerva wondered, even as a goddess speaks to goddess, one muse said, "Those whom you see have only recently been added to the many families of birds. They faced a contest, and they lost. Their father was rich Pierus, the lord of Pella, and they had Paeonian Evipe as their mother. 9 times she had called upon the powerful Lucina for help, and 9 times she had given birth. Those stupid sisters, proud that they were 9 in number, traveled through Haemonia and through Achaia, touching every town, until at last they came to Helicon, and challenged us to match their art of song. O goddesses of Thespia, it's time you stop beguiling the untutored mob with counterfeited songs, for you are frauds. If you are confident, compete with us. Neither your voice nor art can match our own, and we can match your numbers. If you lose, then yield to us the spring of Pegasus and Aganippe to your other font. And if you win, we will concede to you the plains of all our broad Emathia, as far as our snow-clad Paeonia, and let the nymphs be judges of this test. Though it was shameful to contend with them, there was more shame, we thought, in turning down their challenge. So the nymphs were called to judge. They swore upon the streams, and then sat down on benches that were formed of porous stone. Now all was ready. Without drawing lots, the one who'd been the first to challenge us began. She sang the battle of the gods and giants. She unjustly glorified the giants and belittled the great gods. She said that when Typhoeus bounded up from earth's abyss, the gods on high were so afraid that they ran off and did not stop until exhausted they were taken in by Egypt at the point where 7 mouths divide the flow of Nile. And then she dared to tell us that Typhoeus, the son of earth, had reached their refuge, and to hide, the gods took on deceitful shapes as camouflage. So Jove became a ram, the lord of flocks. That's why the Libyan Ammon still is shown with curving horns. The god of Delos hid within a crow's shape, Bacchus in a kid, and Phoebus' sister in a cat. The daughter of Saturn took the form of a white heifer, and just as Venus hid herself as fish, Silene's god became a winged ibis. With that, her song was done. Her voice had been accompanied by chords upon the strings. Now we, the Muses of Aonia, were challenged to reply. But if your time is short and other cares call you away, you may not want to hear the song we sang. No, no, you can be sure, Minerva said. I'll listen from the start until you end. She sat down in the woodland's pleasant shade. The muse replied, We chose Calliope for all of us. She would, as one, compete. Our sister rose, her flowing tresses wreathed with ivy. She began to pluck the strings, and their vibrations joined her mournful chant. The first to furrow earth with the curved plough, the first to harvest wheat, the first to feed the world with food men cultivate in peace, the first to bless the earth with laws, was Ceres. All things are gifts she gave. I want to sing of Ceres. May my offering be worthy. This goddess surely merits poetry. The island mass of Sicily is heaped upon a giant's body. Underneath its soil and stones, Typhoeus lies, the one who dared to hope for heaven as his kingdom. He writhes, he often tries to rise again, but Mount Pelorus, closest to the land of the Italians, crushes his right hand. His left is in Pacinus's grip, just as his legs are in Mount Lilybaeum's grasp. His head is pressed, vast Etna holds it fast. Beneath this mountain on his back, in rage, Typhoeus' mouth spits ashes, vomits flames. He often strives to heave aside the ground, the towns and heavy peaks that pin him down. Then earth quakes as it trembles. Even he who rules the kingdom of the silent dead is anxious, for the crust of Sicily may split, and a wide crack reveal things secret. Daylight might penetrate so deep that it would terrify the trembling shades. His fear of such disaster led that lord of darkness to leave his sunless kingdom. Mounted on his chariot, it was drawn by two black stallions, he carefully assessed the island mass. When he was sure that there were no vast cracks, that Sicily was everywhere intact, his fears were ended. Then, as Pluto rode from site to site down from her mountain slopes of Attucks, Venus saw him. As she clasped her winged son, Cupid, this is what she asked. "O you, my son, my weapon, and my armor, dear Cupid, you, my power, take those shafts to which both gods and mortals must submit. With one of your swift arrows pierce the chest of Pluto, god who, when the lots were cast, assigning the three realms, received the last. You conquer and command sky deities, not even Jove is free from your decrees. Sea gods are governed by your rule, and he who is the god of gods who rule the sea. And why should Tartarus elude our laws? Why not extend your mother's power and yours? 1/3 of all the world is still not ours. We have been slow to act, but indecision has earned us nothing more than scorn in heaven. And, son, if my authority should weaken, then yours would suffer too. Do you not see how both Athena and the hunting goddess Diana would defy me? And the daughter of Ceres, if we let her choose, will be like them. She is so bent on chastity. But for the sake of all I share with you, please join that goddess girl Proserpina to her great uncle Pluto." This she asked. Love, opening his quiver, he respects his mother. From his 1,000 shafts selects the sharpest, surest shaft, the arrows most responsive to the pressure of his bow. Across his knee the pliant bow is bent. Love's hooked barb pierces Pluto through the chest. Not far from Enna's walls there are deep waters. That lake, called Pegasus, hears a music richer, more songs of swans that even the Caster hears as its current courses. Tall hills circle that lake. Woods crown the slopes, and like a veil, the forest boughs abate the flames of Phoebus. Beneath those leaves the air is cool, the soil is damp, with many flowers, many colors. There spring is never ending. In that grove Proserpina was playing, gathering violets and white lilies. She had filled her basket, and within her tunic's folds had tucked fresh flowers, vying with her friends to see which girl could gather more of them. There Pluto, almost in one instant, saw, was struck with longing, carried that girl off. So quick, unhesitating, was his love. The goddess girl was terrified. She called in grief upon her mother and companions, but more upon her mother. She had ripped her tunic at its upper edge, and since the folds were loosened now, the flowers fell. So simple is the heart of a young girl that, at that loss, new grief is what she felt. Her captor urged his chariot, incited his horses, calling each by name and shaking the dark rust reins upon their necks and manes. He galloped over the deep lake and through the pools of the Paliki, where the soil spews fumes of sulphur and the waters boil. He reached that place where the Bacchiadae, a race that came from Corinth, which is bathed by seas upon two sides, had built their city between two harbors of unequal size. Between the spring of Chiane and the spring of Arethusa, which had flowed from Greece, there is a stretch of sea that is hemmed in, confined between two narrow horns of land. Among those waves lived Chiane, Sicily's most celebrated nymph, and she had given her name to that lagoon. Above the eddies, just at the center, Chiane rose waist high. She recognized Proserpina and cried, "Pluto, you cannot pass, you cannot be the son-in-law of Ceres unless she gives her consent. To ask is not to rape, and if I may compare small things to great, I too was wooed by Anapus, but I wed him in answer to his prayers and pleas. He never used the terror you abuse." That said, she stretched her arms upon both sides to block his chariot, but Saturn's son could not contain his anger any longer. He spurred his terrifying stallions, whirled his royal scepter with his sturdy arm. He struck the very depths of Chiane's pool. The blow was such that down to Tartarus the earth opened up a crater. On that path he plunged to darkness in his chariot. But Chiane nursed an inconsolable, a silent wound that was incurable, a sadness for the rape of Ceres' daughter, and for the violation of the waters of her own pool, for Pluto's scorn and anger. She gave herself to tears, and then dissolved into the very pool of which she had till now been the presiding deity. You could have seen the softening of her limbs, the bones and nails that lost solidity, her slender hairs, her fingers, legs, and feet. These were the first to join the waves. In fact, the slenderest parts can sooner turn into cool waters. Shoulders, back, and sides and breasts were next to vanish in two thin streams. At last, clear water flows through Chiane's weakened veins, and there is nothing left that one can grasp. Meanwhile, the heartsick Ceres seeks her daughter. She searches every land, all waves and waters. No one, not Dawn with her dew-laden hair, nor Hesperus, saw Ceres pause. She kindled two pine-wood torches in the flames of Etna. Through nights of frost, a torch in either hand, she wandered. Ceres never rested. When the gracious day had dimmed the stars, again the goddess searched from west to east, from where the sun would set to where the sun ascends. Worn out and racked by thirst, she had not wet her lips at any spring along her path. She chanced to see a hut whose roof was thatched with straw, and Ceres knocked at that poor door, which an old woman opened. When she saw the goddess there, and heard her ask for water, she gave her a sweet drink in which she'd soaked roast barley. While the goddess drank this brew, a boy came up to her, and scornful, rude, he laughed and said she drank too greedily. Offended, Ceres stopped her sipping, threw the brew and all its pearly barley grains full in his face. So, soaked, his face soon showed those grains as spots. His arms were changed to claws, a tail was added to his altered limbs, and that his form might not inflict much harm, the goddess shrank him, left him small, much like a lizard, and yet tinier in size. This wondrous change was watched by the old woman, who wept to see even as she tried to touch the transformed shape. He scurried off to find a place to hide. The name he got is suited to his skin, the starry newt, a beast that glitters with his star-like spots. To tell the lands and seas that Ceres crossed would take too long. The world was not enough to satisfy the searching mother. She returned to Sicily, explored again each part. She reached the pool of Chione. If Chione had not been changed, she now would have told Ceres all she knew, but while she longs to speak, she lacks a tongue to tell. Yet Chione transmitted one sure clue. Upon the surface of her waters floats the girdle that Proserpina had worn. That girdle, one that Ceres knew so well, had chanced to fall into the sacred pool. No sooner had she recognized that sign than Ceres, as if now, for the first time, she knew her daughter had been stolen, tore her unkept hair. Her hands beat at her breast again, again. She did not know as yet just where her daughter was, but she condemned all lands. She said that they were ungrateful and unworthy of the gift of harvest she had given them. Above all, Sicily, the place that showed the trace of the misdeed. And there in Sicily she, without pity, shattered the plows that turned the soil. Her fury brought death to both the farmers and their cattle. She spoiled the seeds. She ordered the plowed fields to fail. She foiled the hope and trust of mortals. Now Sicily's fertility, renowned throughout the world, appears to be a lie. As soon as grass is in the blade, it dies, undone by too much rain or too much sun. The stars and winds bring blight. The greedy birds devour the seed as soon as it is sown. The crop is blocked by chokeweeds, tares, and thorns. Then Arethusa, whom Alpheus loved, lifted her head above her waters. These had flowed to Sicily from Grecian Elis. She brushed her dipping hair back from her brow and said, "O Ceres, mother of the girl you seek throughout the world, you, mother of earth's fruits and grain, forego your fury and your devastating violence. This land does not deserve your scourging. It was forced to yield before the bandits' brutal course, and I do not beseech you on behalf of my own homeland. I was not born here. I come from Pisa in the land of Elis. My origins were there, yet Sicily is dearer to me than all other countries. I, Arethusa, have a new-found home. Sweet Sicily is now my country, and, kind Ceres, may your mercy save this island. Why I have left my homeland, why I crossed so vast a stretch of sea until I touched Ortygia. There will yet be time enough to speak of that, a time when you are free of cares, a moment of tranquillity. But I can tell you now my journey's path. Earth opening a chasm, let me pass. I flowed through caverns deep below the surface. Then, here, I lifted up my head again. Again I saw the stars I had forgotten. But in my passage underneath the earth, among the eddies of the Styx, I saw Proserpina with my own eyes. She was downcast, still somewhat touched by fear, and yet she was a queen within that world of darkness, the powerful companion, mighty mistress of Pluto, tyrant of the underworld. Hearing these things, the mother Ceres stood as motionless as stone. Long moments passed, her mind seemed lost, when that paralysis of fear had given way to grief no less oppressive. Ceres, on her chariot, rode toward the upper air. With shadowed eyes, her hair disheveled, hate inflamed, she cried, "For one who is of both your blood and mine, O Jupiter, I come to plead with you. Though I, her mother, do not matter, you at least can care to save your daughter. I should hope your care will not be any less because she owes her birth to me. Our daughter, after so long a search, is found, if one can speak of finding, when it just confirms the loss more certainly, when Finding means no more than merely knowing where she is. As for his theft of her, that I can bear. He only has to give her back. My daughter is mine no longer, but you cannot let a robber win her as his wife through theft. Then Jupiter replied, We share the care and tenderness we owe to our dear daughter. But if we would have things named properly, then we must speak of love, not injury or robbery. We should not be ashamed of Pluto as a son-in-law, if only you, goddess, would consent to that. Were he to lack all else, it is no meagre thing to be the brother of a Jupiter. But he, in fact, has many other splendors. The portion of the world assigned to him is, after all, a kingdom, only less than what my portion is, and only chance assigned this part to me, and that to him. In any case, if you are so intent on separating them, Proserpina can see the sky again, on one condition, that in the world below she has not taken food to her lips. This is the Fates' edict. These were his words, and yet, though Ceres wanted to bring her daughter back, the Fates prevented Proserpina's return, for she had broken her fast. The girl, in all her innocence, while she was wandering through a well-kept garden within the underworld, from a bent branch had plucked a pomegranate. She had taken, peeling away its pale rind, 7 seeds, and pressed them to her lips. No one had seen that act of hers, except Ascalaphus, the son, they say, that Orphne, not the least famous among Avernus's nymphs, conceived out of her love for Acheron, and bore within the dark groves of the underworld. He saw her taste those seeds. Denouncing her, he thwarted her return to earth. She moaned, the queen of Erebus. Then in revenge, she changed that witness. He was made a bird of evil omen. On his head she poured waters of Phlegethon. Enormous eyes and beak and feathers now are his. Deprived of what he was, he now wears tawny wings. His head is swollen, and his nails grow long and hook back, forming claws, and it is hard for him to move the feathers that now sprout upon his sluggish arms. He has become the bird that men detest, that would announce calamities. He is the lazy screech owl, bringer of bitter auguries to mortals. Ascalaphus indeed seems to have earned his punishment. His tongue was indiscreet. But, Achelous's daughters, why do you, as sirens, have birds' feathers and birds' feet, and features like a girl's? Is it because you, sirens, skilled in song, had been among the band of friends who joined Proserpina when she was gathering spring flowers near Enna? For after you in vain had searched all lands for her so that the waves might also witness that search for one you loved, you voiced a plea to be allowed to glide above the sea, using your arms as oars to beat the air. You found the gods were well disposed to answer. Your limbs were wrapped at once in golden feathers, but you were mesmerizing, suasive singers, born to entrance the ears, and that your lips not lose that gift, each one of you was left with young girl's features and a human voice. And what did Jupiter do then? Between his brother Pluto and his grieving sister, he has to strike a balance. He divides the turning year into 2 equal portions. Proserpina is shared by the 2 kingdoms. The goddess is to spend 6 months beside her husband and 6 months beside her mother. At once the goddess's face and spirit alter. Her brow, which until then seemed overcast, even to sombre Pluto, now is glad, just as when it defeats the dark rain clouds, the sun appears, victorious and proud. Generous Ceres, now at peace, at last she has her daughter back, returns to ask you, Arethusa, why you fled from Greece, and why you have become a sacred spring. The waves fall still, their tutelary goddess raises her head above the depths, and after her hands have twisted dry her damp green tresses, she tells the tale of how, long since, Alpheus, the river god of Elis, longed for her. I was, she says, one of the nymphs who live in the Achaean woods. I was intent on tracks and trails and setting hunting nets. No nymph had greater passion for such tasks. I never wanted to be known for beauty. I thought my courage was conspicuous, but all my fame was for mere loveliness. One day, no day that I forget, I made my way back from the forest of Stymphalus. That day was hot, but twice as hot for me. The hunting had been hard, and I was weary. I came upon a stream. Unmurmuring and unperturbed, it glided, crystalline, so clear down to the river-bed that one could count each pebble there. That stream was so transparent that it did not seem to flow. Along the river banks the slopes received the shadows cast by gray-white willow trees, and poplars nourished by those waters, shade that was the gift of nature. I drew near, and first I bathed my feet, then I went in up to my knees. But now I wanted more cool water. I undid my dress. I left my soft gown draped on a bent willow branch. Naked I plunged into the stream, and while I strike those waters in 1,000 ways, dividing, joining, splashing as I play, my arms withdrawing, plunging in, I hear the strangest murmur rising from the depths. I seek the nearest river bank in fear. Where do you flee so quickly, Arethusa? Alpheus from his waters called to me. Where do you flee so quickly? So did he again speak so hoarsely I could only flee without my dress, left on the other shore. My nakedness only inflames him more. He hurries after me. Naked, I seem to him that much more ready for the taking. I race, he fiercely presses after me, even as doves with trembling wings will flee the hawk, and hawk pursue the frightened doves. I passed Orchomenos, Psophis, Selene, the vales of Minalis, chill Erymanthus and Elis. I sustained my pace. Alpheus did not outrace me, but I could not match his strength. My speed was spent. I could not last as long as his. Yet over level fields and wooded hills, across the spurs and rocks, no path had ever marked. I did not stop. The sun was at my back. I could see a giant shadow stretch ahead of me, perhaps a phantom fashioned by my fear, but I could surely hear his dread footsteps, and I could feel his massive panting breath upon the band that clasped my hair. As I collapsed, exhausted by that course, I cried, Diana, save me! He is at my side. I was your weapon's faithful guardian, the huntress whom you chose to bear your bow, the keeper of your quiver and your arrows. The goddess had been touched, and she detached one cloud from a thick cloud bank, and she cast that cloud around me. And when I was wrapped in darkness, then Alpheus, ignorant of where I was, searched in the mist, vainly. Around the spot where she had hidden me, he circled twice, and twice, unknowing, cried, "Oh, Arethusa! Arethusa!" I was in the grip of what great misery. Was I not like the lamb when it can hear wolves howl around the fold, or like the hare that, hidden by a hedge, can see the dread muzzles of the dogs and dares not stir? And yet Alpheus does not leave. Aware that I have stopped, no footprints trail behind, Alpheus probes the cloud that cloaks the ground. I am beset. Cold sweat runs down my flesh, my body rains dark drops, my hair drips dew, and where I move my feet, a pool is born. And less time than it takes to tell you now all that was happening. I am a spring, but in those waters he, the river god, Alpheus, recognizes me, his love. Leaving the human likeness he had worn, he once again takes on his river form, that he might mingle with me. And the goddess of Delos cracked a chasm through the earth's crust. I plunged into deep caverns, then was brought here to Ortygia, dear to me because its name is like the other name of Delos, the island of Diana, and because Ortygia is the place where, from below the earth, up toward the air and sky, I flowed. When Arethusa's tale had reached its end, the goddess of fertility prepared her chariot. She yoked her sacred pair of dragons. With their bits held tight, she rides upon the air, between the earth and sky. Once at Athena's town, on touching ground, she gives her chariot as well as seeds of grain to young Triptolemus, and these she'd have him scatter wide in many lands. The youth flies over Europe and the breadth of Asia. Reaching Scythia, he descends. The ruler of that land is Lyncus, and he enters the king's palace. When he's asked to tell how he had come, and what and why might be his name and country, he replies, "My home is famous Athens, and my name Triptolemus. No ship has brought me here across the waves. My feet did not cross land. The air disclosed its roads to me. I bring the gift of Ceres. If you scatter these across your spacious fields, they're sure to yield rich harvests, cultivated, peaceful food." And Lyncus, that barbarian, was struck by envy. But that he might come to be far famed as a great benefactor, he received his guest with hospitality. Yet when his guest was fast asleep, the king attacked. His blade was just about to pierce the chest of the Athenian when Ceres transformed the Scythian king into a lynx, then had Triptolemus ride off again. Across the air he drove her sacred dragon pair. Calliope was done. Her learned song, sung with such skill, stopped here. The nymphs, as one, agreed. We goddesses of Helicon had won. The losers could not stand their loss. They shouted insults at us. As they scoffed, Calliope replied, "You challenged us. For that alone you merit punishment. But now you dare to add your rude abuse. Our patience is not endless. You would test our anger, and our wrathful rage unchecked." The sisters jeer and fleer, they scorn our threats. But even as we warned them, when they lift their hands to mock us, they now notice this: the feathers sprouting from their fingers and the plumage covering their arms. And each can see a sister's face with rigid beak protruding now, and see new birds retreat into the trees. And when they try to beat their breasts, they all are borne by flapping wings. They fly into the air as insolent magpies, the mocking dwellers in the woods. Yet, though they are now winged, their endless need for sharp, impulsive, harsh, derisive speech remains. Their old loquacity they keep.